If you found yourself listening to this at a moment when the world feels strangely quiet around you, that silence is not empty, it is deliberate. If you are hearing these words right now, the fact that you are alone is not an accident. Something within you already knew this moment required space. Not space to think harder, not space to analyze, but space to soften, space to listen in a different way. This is not entertainment. This is not spiritual information to collect and move on from. This is a transmission carefully aligned with the frequency you are capable of receiving right now, without distortion, without interference. And you were not drawn here because you have reached some spiritual milestone or earned a badge of worthiness. You were drawn here because the timeline itself is accelerating, and your role within it is no longer preparation. It is activation. That restlessness you have been feeling lately, the subtle agitation that has no clear cause, the quiet urgency that follows you through ordinary days, the sense that something fundamental is shifting beneath the surface of your life, that was never anxiety. That was memory beginning to stir. And memory, when it wakes, does not shout. It whispers. Many people misunderstand this stage. They think awakening should feel dramatic, explosive, filled with certainty. But in truth, it often begins like a gentle pressure from within, as if an old door you forgot existed has started to loosen on its hinges. You may not yet know what is on the other side. You only know that pretending the door is not there no longer works. You see, the forgetting you have lived with for so long was never a mistake. It was not a failure of awareness or a flaw in your soul. It was intentional. To enter this world fully, to experience density, limitation, time, identity, you had to forget the vastness you came from. Just as an actor must forget the audience to play the role convincingly, you forgot your origin so that the human experience could feel real. That forgetting became your cocoon. And like all cocoons, it was never meant to be permanent. Inside it, something was forming, not perfection depth, not purity, compassion. Your confusion shaped patience. Your struggle carved humility. Your moments of feeling lost refined an inner strength you could not have developed any other way. None of it was wasted. Not a single season of doubt. Now the cocoon is thinning. You may notice this first in your body, not your thoughts. Perhaps your nervous system feels more sensitive than it used to. Loud environments drain you more quickly. Certain conversations feel heavier than before. This is not weakness. It is recalibration. Your system is learning how to hold more coherence, more subtlety, more presence. A violin string must be tuned gently before it can carry a deeper tone. Force would only snap it. So if you find yourself needing more rest, more slowness, more kindness toward yourself, honor that. Integration is not achieved through pressure. It unfolds through allowance. For a long time, you were taught directly or indirectly to shrink, to soften your light so others would feel comfortable, to compress your truth so it would fit into familiar shapes. Like trying to pour the ocean into a teacup. You learned to spill most of yourself just to belong. But the discomfort you felt doing that was never rebellion. It was resonance misaligned. A quiet knowing that what you are cannot live indefinitely inside something smaller than itself. And this is where many people misunderstand awakening again. They believe new abilities are being given to them, but nothing essential is being added. What is happening is remembering. Latent capacities that were set aside are unlocking. Sensitivity, intuition, the ability to influence reality not through force, but through coherence. Reality responds to alignment far more readily than it ever responds to effort. You are not here now to merely receive information. That phase is passing. You are becoming a transmitter, a stabilizing presence in the collective field. This does not require teaching, preaching, or convincing anyone of anything. Frequency does not persuade. It resonates. Your presence alone subtly reorganizes the space around you, the way a tuning fork brings nearby instruments into harmony without touching them. This is why old patterns begin to fall away at this stage. Beliefs you once accepted without question start to feel tight. Emotional reactions that once seemed automatic no longer fit the person you are becoming. And yes, This release can feel uncomfortable. Old survival strategies dissolve with friction. Emotions rise unexpectedly. Dreams grow vivid. The body speaks more loudly. None of this means you are going backward. It means the structures that once protected you have completed their job. Discomfort here is not punishment. It is confirmation, like muscles aching as they strengthen. Something is reorganizing itself for greater freedom. Welcome it, not as an enemy, but as a signal that movement is occurring. As this continues, memory returns in non-linear ways, not as facts or stories, but as recognition. Symbols repeat. Certain numbers catch your eye again and again. Moments feel strangely familiar, as if you have been here before in another form. This is not imagination. It is resonance resurfacing. Do not rush to interpret it. Memory does not need analysis to function. It needs space. Grounding becomes essential now, though not in the way many assume. Grounding is not the opposite of expansion. You are not meant to escape this world. You are meant to inhabit it more fully than ever before. Your body is not an obstacle to awakening. It is the instrument through which awakening becomes lived reality. Walking becomes a conversation with the earth beneath you. Breathing becomes communion rather than survival. Even the most ordinary acts, preparing food, tending a plant, washing your hands can feel quietly sacred when presence is allowed to fill them. This is not spirituality as performance. This is consciousness becoming embodied. As your frequency clarifies, your relationships naturally reorganize. Some people feel drawn closer without explanation. Others drift away without conflict. This is not loss. It is harmonic adjustment. Nothing is being taken from you. Space is being made. The new timeline you are entering does not reveal itself all at once. It unfolds as you move. The old need for certainty dissolves. Control softens into trust. Like stepping stones appearing only after you place your foot forward. Direction becomes something you discover by participating, not planning. And purpose, real purpose, is no longer a role you perform. It is a state you inhabit. It expresses itself through joy, curiosity, creativity, and service that feels natural rather than forced. Follow what brings quiet aliveness. That is the compass now. You are not late. You never were. Every pause, every detour, every season where you felt stalled was part of the timing. What looked like stagnation was often integration. What felt like resistance was foundation forming. This moment is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you were before you learned to hide. Before sleep tonight, speak gently to yourself, not as an affirmation to convince the mind, but as a permission offered to the body and the field around you. I remember my true nature. I allow alignment with what I already am. I let my path unfold without force. You are not witnessing a shift from the outside. It is unfolding through you, like a river no longer straining to flow upstream, finally allowed to move in the direction it always knew. And this quiet beginning you are experiencing now, this is not the end of something. It is the moment the remembering becomes irreversible. 1. The forgetting was never a mistake. The state of forgetting who you are that you have lived inside for so long was not an accident, and it was never a malfunction in your awareness or a flaw in your soul. It was a deliberate choice made from a level of intelligence far deeper than the thinking mind. A choice shaped by wisdom rather than punishment, by intention rather than loss. You did not fall asleep spiritually because you were weak. You entered forgetting because the experience you came here to live required it. To step fully into physical density, to feel the weight of time, identity, limitation, and form, consciousness had to narrow its field of vision. You could not have tasted separation while holding constant awareness of unity. You could not have learned compassion while permanently anchored in boundless clarity. You could not have touched the raw edges of being human while remaining fully identified with the infinite. So you forgot. And that forgetting was not careless. It was precise. Think of it like an actor stepping onto a stage. To perform the role convincingly, the actor must temporarily forget the audience. Forget the script as something memorized. Forget even the self who rehearsed. The role must feel real from the inside. If the actor remained fully aware of the lights, the seats, the applause, waiting at the end, the performance would lose its depth. In the same way, you entered this life not to observe it from a distance, but to live it from within. Forgetting was the price of authenticity. This is why the forgetting went so deep. It was not just intellectual. It moved into the body, the nervous system, the emotional memory, the inherited patterns of family and culture. You did not merely forget your origin. You learned what it feels like to believe you are only this name, this story, this history. You learned what it feels like to seek safety, approval, meaning, and love from the outside. You learned what it feels like to doubt yourself, to hesitate, to feel small in a world that often rewards hardness more than honesty. And yet, even in the deepest forgetting, something remained untouched, a quiet center that never left, a knowing that slept, but did not disappear, like an ember buried beneath ash. It waited for the right conditions to breathe again. The forgetting was not a failure because it had a function. It allowed you to experience contrast, and contrast is how awareness sharpens itself. You learned what kindness feels like because you encountered cruelty. You learned humility because you touched limitation. You learned patience because clarity did not arrive on demand. These lessons are not theoretical. They are lived, earned through experience rather than understood through ideas. Many people carry shame about the years they spent confused, lost, or disconnected. They look back and judge themselves for not knowing sooner, not awakening faster, not making better choices. But this judgment misses the deeper truth. Those years were not wasted time. They were incubation. They were the slow, unseen work of something forming beneath the surface. A seed buried in the soil looks inactive from the outside. Nothing seems to be happening. But beneath the ground, roots are forming in darkness. Strength is being gathered quietly, without witnesses. If the seed were to break open too early, before its structure was ready, it would not survive. The darkness was not an enemy to the seed. It was protection. In the same way, the forgetting you experienced acted as a cocoon. And a cocoon is not a prison. It is a sacred container. Inside it, the old form dissolves. Structures that once defined identity soften and lose their rigidity. This dissolution can feel frightening when you are inside it, because it often feels like losing yourself. But in truth, it is the loss of what you were never meant to keep. Inside the cocoon, the caterpillar does not simply grow wings. It undergoes a complete reorganization. What it was must dissolve so that what it is becoming can emerge. This process is not gentle or orderly. It is chaotic, unseen, and irreversible. And yet, it is guided by an intelligence that knows exactly what it is doing. Your forgetting served the same purpose. It allowed the ego structures you needed for survival to form. And then, over time, to be outgrown, it allowed you to build an identity strong enough to function in the world, and then flexible enough to eventually loosen. The confusion you felt was not evidence of failure. It was evidence that the old structures were no longer sufficient. This is why remembering often begins not with clarity, but with discomfort. The cocoon starts to thin. The walls that once felt solid begin to feel tight. Old beliefs no longer fit. Old definitions of success, safety, and meaning start to feel hollow. You may not yet know what is replacing them, but you can feel that something is ending. This ending is not collapse. It is transition. When remembering begins, it does not announce itself loudly. It does not arrive as certainty or dramatic revelation. It often shows up as restlessness, as a sense that the life you are living is no longer aligned with the truth you can feel but cannot yet articulate. It may appear as a quiet grief for something you cannot name, or a longing that has no clear object. This is not pathology. It is the call of what is real beginning to surface. You are not broken because you forgot. You are human. And being human, in its fullest sense, includes the experience of forgetting and remembering. The mistake would have been to remain asleep forever, The mistake would have been to refuse the moment when the cocoon begins to open. But you did not refuse it. The very fact that you are drawn to reflect on these things, that you feel moved rather than indifferent, that something inside you recognizes the truth beneath these words, is evidence that the forgetting has completed its task. The cocoon has done its job. The pressure you feel now is not punishment. It is readiness. Readiness does not mean you have all the answers. It means you are willing to be honest, willing to feel, willing to loosen your grip on identities that once felt necessary but now feel heavy, willing to trust that what is emerging does not need to be forced. This is where gentleness becomes essential. You do not tear your way out of a cocoon. You allow it to open. Forcing remembrance creates distortion. Allowing remembrance creates integration. The wisdom you are reconnecting with is not impatient. It has waited lifetimes. It does not need you to rush. So if you find yourself moving more slowly now, questioning more deeply, resting more often, this is not regression. It is respect for the process. The deepest transformations do not happen through effort. They happen through surrender to timing. The forgetting was never a mistake because it gave you depth. And depth is what allows remembering to be lived, not just known. You are not returning to innocence. You are returning with experience, with humility, with compassion shaped by having walked through darkness rather than around it. What is emerging now is not a fantasy of perfection. It is a grounded, embodied knowing, a quiet confidence that does not need to convince, a clarity that does not need to dominate, a presence that understands suffering without becoming lost in it. The cocoon is opening because you are ready to inhabit what you have become. Not the version of you that existed before the forgetting, but the one shaped by it. This remembering is not about escaping the human experience. It is about finally inhabiting it fully, without the armor that once kept you small. And as this remembering continues, it will not erase your past. It will integrate it. Every version of you that struggled, doubted, endured, and kept going will be gathered back into wholeness. Nothing will be rejected. Nothing will be wasted. That is the quiet truth beneath it all. The forgetting did not take anything from you. It prepared you to receive yourself more completely than ever before. 2. The nervous system is also awakening. What many people are quick to label as overwhelm is often something far more precise and far more intelligent than it appears on the surface. It is not that life has suddenly become too much for you, nor is it evidence that you are failing to cope or falling behind. In many cases, what you are experiencing is your nervous system recalibrating itself to hold a higher level of internal coherence. Something within you is reorganizing so that you can remain present, where previously you would have gone numb, reactive, or shut down. For a long time, survival required tension, staying alert, bracing the body. Tightening against uncertainty became normal. The nervous system learned to scan constantly, to anticipate threat, to hold the muscles of attention in a subtle state of contraction. This was not a mistake. It was adaptation. It kept you functional in environments that demanded speed, productivity, and emotional restraint. But adaptation is not the same as alignment. What once protected you can eventually become too heavy to carry. As awareness deepens, the body can no longer sustain that old level of contraction without protest. The system begins to ask for something different. More space, more rest, more honesty. This request does not come as a neatly worded message. It comes as sensitivity. Sounds feel louder. Crowds feel draining. Certain conversations feel unbearable in a way they never did before. You may notice that your tolerance for noise, urgency, or emotional pretense has decreased. This is not fragility. It is refinement. The nervous system is not lagging behind consciousness. It is catching up to it. For years, many people developed insights faster than their bodies could integrate them. They understood ideas about presence, surrender, and awareness intellectually, while their nervous systems were still operating in survival mode. This created a quiet split. The mind reached upward, while the body stayed braced. Now that split is closing. And when integration begins, It can feel destabilizing at first, like learning to walk differently after years of compensating for an old injury. Integration is not comfortable, but it is honest. Gentleness becomes essential here, not as a luxury, but as a requirement. You cannot force a nervous system into coherence any more than you can force a river to flow smoothly by pushing the water. Coherence emerges when resistance softens, when the body feels safe enough to release patterns that are no longer needed, when the system is allowed to downshift without being judged. This is why rest begins to feel non-negotiable. Not the kind of rest that numbs or distracts, but rest that allows the system to settle. Moments of stillness where nothing needs to be achieved, where presence replaces performance, where the body is not being asked to prove its worth through productivity. Many people confuse this phase with regression. They believe they should be able to handle more, move faster, tolerate what they once tolerated. But awakening does not increase your capacity to endure misalignment. It increases your sensitivity to it. What once went unnoticed now registers clearly. This is not weakness. It is clarity arriving at the level of the nervous system. Think of it like adjusting the resolution on a screen. As the image becomes sharper, distortions that were once blurred suddenly stand out. You cannot unsee them. And once the body senses incoherence, it will no longer cooperate with environments, habits, or relationships that require constant self-abandonment. This is where many people feel confused. They believe they are becoming less capable, when in fact, they are becoming less willing to violate themselves. The nervous system, when it begins to awaken, becomes less tolerant of chronic stress, emotional suppression, and false urgency. It asks for truth in simple ways: slower mornings, fewer obligations, clearer boundaries, more time in nature, more silence. None of this is spiritual bypassing. It is biological wisdom expressing itself. Your body has always been an intelligent participant in your evolution, not an obstacle to transcend. It remembers what safety feels like, even when the mind has forgotten. It knows when something is aligned, long before you can articulate why. Tightness, fatigue, agitation, and heaviness are not failures. They are signals, and signals are not meant to be fought. They are meant to be listened to. At this stage, trying to push through discomfort often creates more fragmentation. The old model of discipline, control, and endurance no longer works. What replaces it is a quieter strength, the strength to pause, the strength to feel, the strength to choose regulation over reaction. This is why kindness toward yourself is not indulgence right now. It is medicine. The nervous system learns through experience, not instruction. It learns safety by being treated gently. It learns trust by not being rushed. When you slow down without guilt, when you allow yourself to breathe without needing a reason, the system receives a message deeper than words. It hears, "You are safe now. You do not have to brace." And when that message begins to register, something remarkable happens. The background tension you once lived with starts to soften. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, like ice melting in warm water. Resistance releases without effort. Energy that was tied up in vigilance becomes available for presence, creativity, and connection. This process cannot be hurried. Any attempt to optimize it, to perfect it, or measure progress will pull you back into the very patterns that are dissolving. The nervous system does not respond to ambition. It responds to consistency, to rhythm, to care. You may notice waves during this time, periods of clarity followed by fatigue, moments of deep calm followed by unexpected emotion. This does not mean something is wrong. It means integration is occurring in layers. Each layer brings the system closer to coherence, but each layer also asks to be met with patience. There is a quiet grief that can surface here as well. Grief for the years spent living in tension without realizing it. Grief for how much effort it took just to feel normal. Allow this grief. It is not self-pity. It is acknowledgement. And acknowledgement is what allows the body to finally release what it has been holding alone. As the nervous system stabilizes, presence deepens naturally. You do not need to concentrate harder to be aware. Awareness begins to rest in the body instead of hovering above it. Breathing becomes fuller without instruction. The shoulders drop without being told. The jaw softens. These small changes matter more than dramatic insights because they signal that consciousness is landing where it belongs. This is integration. Gentleness is not weakness because it requires trust. Trust that you do not need to force your evolution. Trust that the intelligence moving through you knows how to bring itself into balance. Trust that slowing down does not mean falling behind, but arriving. The world has taught you to override your body in the name of progress. Awakening teaches you to listen to it in the name of wholeness. These are very different paths. One leads to exhaustion. The other leads to coherence. You are not becoming fragile. You are becoming honest at the level of your nervous system. And honesty there is profound. It means you are no longer willing to live in ways that require constant self-betrayal. It means your system is learning that safety is not something to be earned, but something that can be allowed. The more you honor this phase, the more stable you become. Not rigidly stable, but resilient. Like a tree with deep roots that can move with the wind without breaking. Regulation replaces control. Presence replaces tension. And from that place, life begins to meet you differently. Nothing about this process is accidental. Your nervous system is awakening because it is preparing to hold more truth without collapsing. More openness without overwhelm. More connection without losing itself. It is learning how to be at home in the present moment, not as an idea, but as a lived experience. And that learning happens not through force, but through care. You do not need to fix yourself. You need to stay with yourself. That is how integration completes. 3. You were never born to live inside small containers. From very early on, most of us learned a quiet lesson that was never spoken directly, yet repeated in countless subtle ways. We learned that to belong, we needed to soften our edges. To be accepted, we needed to be quieter. To stay safe, we needed to make ourselves smaller than what we felt inside. This lesson did not always come from cruelty. Often, it came from love mixed with fear, from people who were doing the best they could within their own limitations. But even when it was well-intentioned, the message carried weight. And over time, it settled into the body as a habit of contraction. You were taught to dim your light not because it was wrong, but because it was inconvenient. Brightness can be unsettling in systems built on conformity. Depth can feel threatening in cultures that reward speed. Sensitivity can be misunderstood in environments that value toughness over truth. So you learn to adjust, to measure your words, to hold back what felt natural, to edit yourself before the world had the chance to reject you. At first, this adaptation feels like wisdom. It feels like maturity. You tell yourself that this is simply how life works, that everyone compromises, that this is the cost of being human. And for a time, this strategy does help you navigate the world. It allows you to function, to maintain relationships, to move through institutions that are not designed for uniqueness but for uniformity. But something subtle happens when this adjustment becomes permanent. The space you give up does not remain empty. It fills with tension, with unexpressed truth, with a quiet ache that has no obvious cause. You may not notice it immediately, because it becomes familiar, like wearing shoes that are slightly too small. You learn to walk around the discomfort rather than question why it exists. The discomfort you feel when you try to dissolve completely into the crowd is not a personality flaw. It is not arrogance. It is not rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It is resonance misaligned. It is the quiet intelligence within you recognizing that what you are cannot be reduced without consequence. Trying to live inside small containers when your nature is expansive does not make you humble. It makes you tired. Imagine trying to fold an entire night sky into a single pocket. No matter how carefully you do it, something essential is lost. Stars disappear. Depth collapses. The vastness that gives meaning to the whole is flattened into something manageable, but no longer alive. This is what happens when you consistently minimize yourself. You survive, but you do not breathe fully. And yet, even after years of doing this, something in you refuses to vanish. You may try to ignore it. You may try to convince yourself that the longing for more authenticity is impractical or unrealistic, but it returns, often in quiet ways. A heaviness at the end of the day. A sense of relief when you are alone and no longer performing. A longing for conversations where you do not have to explain yourself or translate your depth into something palatable. This is not dissatisfaction with life. It is dissatisfaction with limitation. The truth is, you were never meant to disappear into sameness. Your particular way of seeing, feeling, and understanding the world is not an inconvenience to be managed. It is a contribution. But contributions only matter when they are allowed to exist as they are. When you consistently mute your own signal, the world does not become more harmonious. It becomes poorer. Many people confuse authenticity with loudness or dominance. They think stepping out of small containers means forcing their presence, proving their value, or demanding recognition. But true authenticity does not need to announce itself. It simply stops hiding. It stops apologizing for existing in its natural shape. The discomfort you feel with blending in is not a call to stand above others. It is a call to stand within yourself, to inhabit your own depth without needing permission, to allow your truth to breathe without turning it into a weapon or a performance. This is where maturity enters the picture in a deeper way. Not the maturity of self-suppression, but the maturity of self-respect. The understanding that you can be gentle without being invisible, that you can be kind without erasing yourself, that you can belong without betraying your own essence. For many years, you may have believed that being fully yourself would cost you connection. And in some cases, that fear was not unfounded. Certain relationships can only survive as long as you remain smaller than you are. Certain environments depend on your silence to maintain their structure. When you begin to expand naturally, without aggression but without apology, those structures may loosen or fall away. This can be painful. Loss often accompanies expansion. Not because expansion is wrong, but because it reveals what was held together by contraction. Grieving these losses is part of the process. It does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means you chose honesty over comfort. What emerges on the other side is not isolation, but alignment. When you stop forcing yourself to fit, you create space for resonance to find you. People who recognize your frequency without explanation, situations that do not require constant self-monitoring, a sense of ease that does not come from approval, but from coherence. Living outside small containers does not mean life becomes easier in every way, but it becomes simpler. Decisions feel clearer. Boundaries feel more natural. You no longer need to constantly check whether you are acceptable, because you are anchored in something deeper than opinion. This anchoring is quiet. It does not seek attention. It does not need to convince anyone. It simply knows where it stands. And from that place, you can move through the world with a kind of grounded confidence that does not depend on validation. The truth refusing to disappear within you is not asking you to become someone else. It is asking you to stop pretending you are less than you are, to stop negotiating away your depth for temporary peace, to trust that what you carry has a place, even if that place has not yet fully revealed itself. You were not born to fit neatly into pre-existing shapes. You were born to bring something specific into form, and that something cannot emerge while it is constantly compressed. This is not a call to break away dramatically or to reject the world. It is a call to stop shrinking in quiet ways, to notice where you hold back your voice, your insight, your sensitivity, not because it is untrue, but because it might be inconvenient, and then, gently, to choose otherwise. The world does not need more people who blend in perfectly. It needs people who are at home in themselves, people who allow their natural depth to exist without aggression and without apology, people who understand that truth does not need to dominate to be powerful. It only needs to be present. Your discomfort with disappearing was never a problem to solve. It was a compass, pointing you back to the size of your own being. 4. Latent abilities are not being given, they are being unlocked. There is a subtle but essential misunderstanding that many people carry when they begin to sense new capacities awakening within them. They assume something external is being added, as if wisdom, sensitivity, or power arrives from outside, like a reward granted at a certain stage of spiritual development. But what is happening now is not an acquisition. It is a remembering. Nothing essential is being installed into you. What is unfolding is the removal of the locks that once kept certain inner capacities dormant. Sensitivity, multi-dimensional awareness, and the ability to influence reality through alignment rather than effort were never absent from you. They were simply set aside. And they were set aside for a reason. These abilities require a nervous system capable of regulation, a psyche capable of humility, and a sense of self that does not need to dominate or prove. Without those foundations, sensitivity becomes overwhelm, perception becomes confusion, and influence becomes manipulation. So these capacities waited. They waited until the field was ready, until your inner world had enough coherence to hold them without distortion, until your sense of identity softened enough that power could move through you without being claimed by the ego as something special or superior. This waiting was not delay. It was protection. Spiritual sensitivity is not about seeing more than others. It is about feeling more honestly. It is the capacity to sense subtle shifts in atmosphere, emotion, and intention before they take form as words or actions. It allows you to perceive the unspoken, the underlying tone beneath what is being presented. When undeveloped, this sensitivity can feel like fragility. When integrated, it becomes discernment. Many people learned early in life to shut this sensitivity down because it felt overwhelming in environments that were emotionally unpredictable or dismissive. Feeling deeply was not safe. So the system learned to numb. That numbing was not failure. It was intelligence responding to circumstance. Now that the environment within you is becoming more stable, that sensitivity no longer needs to hide. Multidimensional awareness does not mean leaving the physical world behind. It means holding more than one layer of reality at the same time, without fragmentation. You begin to sense that what is happening on the surface of life is not the whole story. There is context beneath events, meaning beneath patterns, and intelligence beneath coincidence. You start to notice how inner states shape outer experiences, not magically, but organically. This awareness develops naturally when you stop forcing life to conform to rigid expectations. When control softens, perception expands. You begin to see connections where before you saw randomness. Timing becomes meaningful. Encounters feel purposeful, not because everything is orchestrated for your benefit, but because you are now aware of the currents you are moving within. The accelerated creation of reality is perhaps the most misunderstood of these capacities. It is often framed as manifestation through willpower, visualization, or constant mental focus. But true acceleration does not come from effort. It comes from coherence. Reality responds more quickly when there is less internal contradiction. When what you think, feel, believe, and embody are no longer pulling in different directions. When inner conflict decreases, movement becomes efficient, like a river no longer fighting itself. Life flows more smoothly. Opportunities appear not because you demanded them, but because you stopped blocking them with resistance. Outcomes align not because you controlled them, but because you became congruent with them. This is why these abilities cannot be forced open. Any attempt to rush them through technique or pressure only strengthens the ego's desire to control, which immediately distorts what is trying to emerge. The system knows this. It opens only when the motivation shifts from power to presence, from wanting to become someone special to being willing to be honest. These capacities awaken in stages, often quietly. You may notice that your intuition becomes clearer without becoming louder. You do not receive dramatic instructions. Instead, you feel a steady sense of knowing that guides simple decisions. You trust your timing more. You sense when to act and when to wait. You begin to recognize when something is aligned without needing external confirmation. This recognition is embodied. It is not a thought. It is a felt sense. The body relaxes when something is right. The breath deepens. There is a subtle yes that does not need explanation. Learning to trust this yes takes time, especially if you were taught to doubt your inner signals. But each time you honor it, coherence strengthens. What is important to understand is that these abilities do not separate you from others. They do not elevate you above ordinary life. In fact, they make you more present, more grounded, more human. Sensitivity deepens compassion. Awareness increases humility. Influence becomes responsibility rather than entitlement. You may notice that as these capacities unlock, your tolerance for dishonesty decreases. Not just dishonesty from others, but from yourself. You can no longer convincingly pretend that something is fine when it is not. You can no longer ignore misalignment without feeling its cost. This is not because you are becoming rigid. It is because perception has sharpened. There is often a period of adjustment here. Old strategies stop working, but new ones have not fully formed. You may feel temporarily unanchored, unsure of how to move forward. This is a natural threshold. It does not require fixing. It requires patience. The field is reorganizing itself. What emerges next will not be a return to the old ways, but a refinement of how you engage with life. The unlocking of these abilities is not a single event. It is a gradual process of integration. Each layer opens only when the previous one has settled. There is no advantage to speed here. Depth matters more than intensity. Stability matters more than spectacle. You do not need to announce this process. You do not need to explain it to anyone. In fact, trying to make sense of it too quickly can pull you out of it. Allow it to be lived rather than defined. Let your actions change naturally. Let your choices reflect your growing coherence without turning it into an identity. Remember that these abilities were never meant to be used against life. They were meant to be used in relationship with it. To listen rather than dominate. To align rather than impose. To participate consciously rather than react unconsciously. The field opens when it feels safety. Safety created by honesty, by self-respect, by regulation rather than control. This is why the awakening of these capacities often follows periods of difficulty. Struggle refines humility. Loss clarifies values. Uncertainty dissolves illusions of control. All of this prepares the ground. What is unlocking now is not extraordinary in the sense of being rare. It is extraordinary in the sense of being natural. This is what happens when consciousness is allowed to mature without being rushed or exploited. You are not becoming something unnatural. You are returning to a level of functioning that has always been part of you. Trust this process, not blindly, but gently. You do not need to reach for these abilities. You need to make space for them. Space created by rest, honesty, and the willingness to let go of who you thought you needed to be. When the field is ready, what is meant to awaken will do so on its own, and it will arrive not as something foreign, but as something deeply familiar. Like a language you once spoke fluently and are now remembering how to use again. Nothing is being given to you now. What is happening is that you are becoming available to yourself. 5. The shift from receiver to transmitter. There comes a moment on this path when something subtle but irreversible changes inside you. You may not be able to point to a specific day or event, but you can feel it in the way you now relate to information, guidance, and truth. You are no longer here merely to receive, to consume, to collect insights as if they were tools you might need someday. Something deeper is taking place. You are becoming a stabilizing presence, a point of coherence, a living signal within the collective field. For a long time, receiving was necessary. You needed language to orient yourself, concepts to name what you were sensing, mirrors to confirm that you were not alone in your experience. Receiving helped you remember. It helped you survive periods of doubt and isolation. But receiving was never meant to be the final position. It was a stage. And stages, when completed, naturally give way to movement. This shift does not mean you stop learning or listening. It means learning no longer sits only in the mind. It moves into embodiment. Information stops being something you hold and becomes something you radiate. You do not wake up one day and decide to be a transmitter. You notice, slowly, that your presence has weight, that rooms feel different when you enter them, that conversations soften or deepen without you trying to guide them, that people feel calmer, more open, or more honest around you, sometimes without knowing why. This is not because you are doing something, it is because you are being something. A transmitter does not push, it does not convince, it does not persuade. It simply maintains coherence. And coherence has an organizing effect, like a steady heartbeat regulating the rhythm of a body. A coherent presence brings order without effort. It does not need to announce itself. It does not need recognition. Its influence is quiet and precise. Many people misunderstand this phase and assume it requires visibility, leadership, or a platform. But transmission does not depend on scale. It depends on integrity. You can transmit in silence. You can transmit through how you listen, through how you pause before responding, through how you stay present when others become reactive. These moments matter more than words because they communicate safety to the nervous systems around you. You become, in a very real sense, an anchor, not because you are holding anyone in place, but because you are stable enough to allow movement around you without being pulled off center. This stability is not rigidity. It is flexibility grounded in awareness. Like a tree with deep roots that can sway without breaking. You hold your position without resisting life's motion. This is why the shift from receiver to transmitter often coincides with a decrease in urgency. You no longer feel the same hunger to figure everything out. You are less compelled to chase explanations or gather endless information. Not because you know everything, but because you trust the intelligence unfolding through direct experience. You sense that what truly matters cannot be rushed or forced into understanding. As this trust deepens, your presence becomes a kind of permission field. People around you may find themselves slowing down without realizing why. They may speak more honestly. They may feel emotions they had been avoiding. This is not something you manage. It happens because coherence invites coherence. Regulation invites regulation. Safety invites truth. It is important to understand that this role does not make you responsible for others. You are not here to fix, heal, or carry anyone. An anchor does not absorb the weight of the ocean. It holds its place within it. Your task is not to take on what belongs to others, but to remain present within yourself. That presence alone is enough to create ripples. This is where discernment becomes essential. As your field stabilizes, you may notice that people project expectations onto you. Some may look to you for answers you cannot give. Others may unconsciously lean on your steadiness rather than developing their own. Compassion does not require self-abandonment. You are allowed to have boundaries. In fact, boundaries protect coherence. Without them, transmission becomes distorted. Transmission is not about output. It is about alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, actions, and values are congruent, your system sends a clear signal. When there is internal contradiction, the signal weakens. This is why integrity matters more than technique. You cannot transmit clarity while ignoring your own misalignment. The field responds not to what you say, but to how honestly you live. There is a humility required here that often goes unnoticed. Becoming a transmitter does not make you special. It makes you accountable. You become more aware of how your inner state affects your environment. You begin to notice how small acts of impatience create disturbance, and how small acts of presence restore balance. This awareness is not meant to create self-judgment. It is meant to cultivate responsibility rooted in compassion. You may also notice periods where you feel less expressive, less inclined to speak or share. This is not regression. It is consolidation. Transmission strengthens in stillness, just as muscles grow during rest rather than exertion. Coherence deepens when you allow yourself to be, rather than perform. Silence is not absence. It is integration. As this phase unfolds, you may realize that your life no longer revolves around seeking peak experiences or constant expansion. Instead, it centers on depth, on consistency, on the quiet satisfaction of living in alignment with what feels true, even when no one is watching. This kind of alignment is not dramatic, but it is powerful. It changes the quality of everything it touches. You are not here to broadcast messages. You are here to broadcast presence. And presence does not need amplification. It carries on its own, like a clear note held steadily. It entrains the surrounding field naturally. This is why effort often falls away at this stage. You realize that forcing outcomes creates noise, while clarity creates movement. The shift from receiver to transmitter is not about stepping into authority over others. It is about stepping into responsibility for your own state. When you tend to your inner coherence, you contribute to the collective without needing to act upon it. This is subtle work, but it is not small. Fields are shaped by stability more than by force. You may never fully see the effects of this role. That is not a flaw. It is part of its purity. Transmission does not seek feedback. It does not require validation. It trusts that resonance finds its way where it is needed. This is why your presence matters more than you think, not because of what you know, but because of how you are. You do not need to speak louder or do more. You need to remain honest, regulated, and open. In doing so, you become a quiet lighthouse, not directing ships, not demanding attention, simply standing where you are, allowing light to do what light naturally does. You are no longer here just to take in the world. You are here to help it remember balance, and that work begins, always, with how you inhabit yourself. 6. Time is no longer moving in a straight line for you. At a certain point in this journey, you begin to notice something quietly unsettling and deeply reassuring at the same time. The way time once felt solid, predictable, and linear no longer holds. Days no longer move in a neat sequence of cause and effect. Events arrive out of order. Answers appear before questions fully form. Encounters happen with such precision that coincidence no longer feels like an adequate explanation. This is not confusion. It is synchronization. For most of your life, time operated like a straight road. You moved forward step by step, believing that progress meant advancement, that healing meant leaving the past behind, that wisdom came later if you waited long enough. This model was useful when identity needed structure and effort needed direction, but it was never the whole truth. It was a functional illusion, one that allowed you to orient yourself while you learned how to exist in form. Now, that illusion is thinning. You may find that memories from long ago surface with unexpected clarity, not to trap you in the past, but to be integrated in the present. You may notice that future possibilities feel emotionally real before they materialize, as if you are remembering something that has not yet happened. This is not fantasy. It is consciousness no longer confining itself to a single point on a timeline. When time stops behaving linearly, meaning begins to replace sequence. Synchronicities increase not because life has suddenly become magical, but because resistance has decreased. When you are no longer fighting where you are, time no longer needs to push you forward. It begins to move with you, like a current that shifts when you stop swimming against it. Timing reorganizes itself around coherence rather than effort. This is why meaningful coincidences cluster together now. A conversation arrives just when you are ready to hear it. A book appears at the exact moment a question has matured within you. A delay turns out to be protection. An interruption becomes a redirection. These are not rewards. They are confirmations, signals that you are no longer operating from fragmentation. You are not ahead. You are not behind. You are in rhythm. The mind struggles with this at first because it was trained to measure progress. It wants milestones, deadlines, proof that you are doing this correctly. But synchronization does not answer to measurement. It answers to presence. When you are fully where you are, time adjusts accordingly. It bends, stretches, compresses, and pauses without asking permission. This can feel disorienting if you try to control it. Old habits may surface, urging you to rush, to plan excessively, to worry about what should have happened by now. But these habits belong to a different operating system. They are echoes from a time when survival depended on anticipation and control. You can acknowledge them without obeying them. As synchronization deepens, You may realize that many of the things arriving now are not new. They feel strangely familiar, like reunions rather than discoveries. This is because some agreements are made long before the conscious mind remembers them. Choices formed at deeper levels of awareness do not disappear just because you forgot them temporarily. They wait. And when conditions align, they surface. What arrives unexpectedly now often carries the feeling of inevitability, not because it was forced, but because it was agreed upon. You may sense that you have stepped into something that has been waiting patiently for you to be ready. This readiness has nothing to do with perfection. It has everything to do with honesty. Honesty collapses time. When you stop pretending, when you stop performing versions of yourself that are misaligned, you release enormous amounts of energy that were previously tied up in maintenance. That energy returns to the present moment, and the present moment, when inhabited fully, becomes spacious. It holds more than you thought possible. In this spaciousness, time stops feeling like an enemy. You no longer feel chased by it or haunted by it. The past loses its grip because it has been metabolized. The future loses its anxiety because it no longer needs to be controlled. You begin to experience life as a series of meaningful convergences rather than a race toward an outcome. This does not mean life becomes predictable. In fact, it often becomes more surprising. But the surprise carries a different quality. It feels supportive rather than destabilizing, like being guided through unfamiliar terrain by an intelligence that knows the landscape intimately. You may notice that when you act prematurely now, things stall. When you wait too long out of fear, things dissolve. But when you move from clarity, even if the step is small, timing responds. Doors open without force. Resistance falls away without explanation. The right people appear not because you searched harder, but because you stopped pushing against what is. This is what it means for time to cooperate with you. It does not serve your preferences. It serves your alignment. There can be grief in this phase as well. Grief for the years you believed you were late. Grief for the pressure you placed on yourself to catch up, to fix, to become someone by a certain age or stage. Allow that grief. It dissolves the last remnants of the old contract with time. The one based on scarcity and comparison. You were never late. You were ripening. Ripening cannot be rushed. Fruit picked too early never develops its full sweetness. In the same way, experiences that arrived only after long waiting often carry depth that quick outcomes never could. What felt like delay was often maturation occurring beneath the surface. As this understanding settles, patience stops feeling like endurance and starts feeling like trust. You no longer wait passively. You wait actively, listening, sensing, adjusting. This kind of waiting is alive. It is responsive. It allows timing to reveal itself rather than forcing it into shape. You may also notice that linear explanations stop satisfying you. You no longer need everything to make sense in sequence. You are comfortable holding paradox, knowing that something can be both unfinished and complete. That healing can happen in layers rather than lines. That progress can look like stillness from the outside. This comfort is a sign of integration. Time no longer governs you because you are no longer resisting where you are. You have stopped arguing with the moment. And when resistance drops, life stops needing to push. The unexpected arrivals in your life now are not interruptions. They are reminders. Reminders of agreements made in clarity, of paths chosen before fear entered the picture, of directions that remained true even when you lost sight of them. You are not being rushed forward. You are being met precisely where you are. And from that meeting point, the next step emerges naturally. Time has not abandoned structure. It has simply stopped pretending to be separate from consciousness. And as you align more fully with yourself, time aligns with you in return, not as a master, but as a companion. This is not something to figure out. It is something to trust, and trust, once learned at this level, does not disappear. 7. Releasing old programming will not feel comfortable. There is a part of this journey that almost everyone underestimates, not because they are unprepared, but because the culture we live in has trained us to associate discomfort with failure. We are taught to believe that if something feels difficult, intense, or destabilizing, then something must be going wrong. Yet when it comes to releasing old survival programming, the opposite is often true. Discomfort is not a sign that you are moving away from truth. It is often the clearest evidence that you are moving closer to it. The patterns dissolving now were not random habits you picked up casually. They were survival strategies. They formed at times when your system needed them to endure environments that did not meet your emotional or psychological needs. These patterns helped you adapt, protect yourself, and remain functional. They were intelligent responses to real conditions. And because they once served a purpose, they do not disappear quietly when they are no longer needed. Old programming does not dissolve politely. It releases with friction. As these patterns loosen, the nervous system recalibrates. The emotional body reopens pathways that were previously restricted, and the physical body releases tension that has been held for years, sometimes decades. This release can manifest in many ways. Emotional waves may arise without a clear narrative. You may feel sadness, anger, or tenderness that does not seem connected to your present circumstances. Dreams may become vivid, symbolic, or emotionally charged, as if the unconscious is sorting through long-stored material. The body itself may speak through sensations, fatigue, restlessness, or sudden shifts in energy. None of this is regression. It is integration in motion. What makes this phase challenging is that the mind wants linear reassurance. It wants to know how long this will last, what it means, and whether you are doing it correctly. But survival programming was not created through logic, and it cannot be dismantled through logic alone. It dissolves through experience, through safety, and through allowing the system to complete processes that were interrupted long ago. Think of it like thawing something that has been frozen for a very long time. As circulation returns, there is tingling, sensitivity, even pain. But this pain is not injury. It is life returning. It is sensation re-entering places that had gone numb in order to survive. If you tried to refreeze those areas to avoid discomfort, you would only prolong the loss of function. In the same way, emotional discomfort during release is not something to be avoided or corrected. It is something to be met with presence. Many people instinctively try to manage this phase by distracting themselves, spiritualizing it, or forcing positivity. They tell themselves they should be beyond this by now, that awakening should feel peaceful, that they should be grateful instead of unsettled. But these expectations add a second layer of suffering. They turn natural release into self-judgment. The truth is simpler and kinder. When old structures dissolve, the system needs time to reorganize. And reorganization is not tidy. You may notice that familiar coping mechanisms no longer work the way they used to. Strategies that once helped you push through discomfort now feel ineffective or even harmful. This can be unsettling because it removes the illusion of control. But what is actually happening is that you are being invited into a different relationship with discomfort. One based not on suppression or endurance, but on listening. Listening changes everything. When you stop treating discomfort as an enemy, it begins to communicate. Emotional waves become information rather than threats. Sensations in the body become signals rather than problems. You start to recognize patterns. You notice that emotions crest and fall like waves when you allow them to move, but stagnate when you resist them. You learn that presence shortens the duration of discomfort far more effectively than analysis ever could. This does not mean you indulge every feeling or get lost in emotion. It means you remain available. You stay with what arises without making it mean something is wrong with you. You do not dramatize the experience, but you also do not dismiss it. You hold it with the same steadiness you would offer someone you care about. There is a deep maturity in this stance. Old programming dissolves when it no longer feels necessary for safety. And safety is communicated not through explanations, but through experience. Each time you allow discomfort to pass without abandoning yourself, the nervous system learns something new. It learns that intensity does not equal danger. That feeling does not equal collapse. that you can remain present even when the ground feels unsteady. This learning accumulates quietly. Over time, the baseline of tension lowers. The system becomes less reactive. Emotional responses become more fluid. You recover more quickly from stress. You stop bracing for the next impact because the body no longer expects constant threat. This is freedom, but it does not announce itself dramatically. It shows up as subtle ease, as space between stimulus and response, as the ability to pause where once you would have reacted automatically. There is often grief embedded in this release as well. Grief for what you endured. Grief for the parts of you that had to grow up too quickly. Grief for the ways you learned to survive at the cost of softness. Allowing this grief is not weakness. It is respect. Those parts of you carried a heavy load. They deserve acknowledgement, not dismissal. As release continues, you may notice moments of unexpected lightness, laughter that feels unforced, breathing that deepens on its own, a sense of relief without a clear reason. These moments are signs that energy once trapped in vigilance is becoming available for living. They do not mean the process is complete. They mean it is working. It is important to understand that discomfort during this phase does not require you to fix yourself. It requires you to stay with yourself. Fixing implies something is broken. Staying implies something is unfolding. One tightens the system. The other allows it to reorganize. There may be times when you feel tempted to go back to old habits simply because they are familiar. Familiarity can feel safer than truth, especially in moments of uncertainty. But each time you choose presence over avoidance, you strengthen a new pattern. A pattern based on trust rather than fear. This is how freedom becomes embodied, not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through countless small moments of choosing not to turn away from yourself. The discomfort you are experiencing is not punishment for growing. It is the friction that occurs when outdated structures come into contact with new coherence. Like tectonic plates shifting beneath the surface, movement is inevitable when alignment changes. The ground may tremble, but something more stable is forming. You are not meant to enjoy every part of this process, but you are meant to trust it. Trust does not mean blind faith. It means recognizing patterns over time. You begin to see that each wave of discomfort leaves you more spacious than before, that each release creates room for something truer to emerge. Eventually, you realize that what you feared was not the discomfort itself, but the idea that it meant you were failing. Once that belief dissolves, the process becomes far less threatening. You stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is being released now?" That shift in question changes everything. You are not being dismantled. You are being freed from structures that once kept you alive, but no longer allow you to live fully. The discomfort you feel is not the end of something going wrong. It is the middle of something resolving. And resolution, when it arrives, does not arrive as fireworks. It arrives as peace you no longer have to work for. 8. Remembering your star origin is not a mental process. There is a quiet misunderstanding that often arises when people begin to sense a deeper origin within themselves. A misunderstanding rooted in the habit of trying to understand everything through the intellect. The mind has been a faithful tool for survival, problem-solving, and navigation in the physical world. So it naturally assumes it should also be the gateway to remembrance. But the kind of remembering unfolding now does not respond to analysis. It does not arrive through effort, interpretation, or mental excavation. In fact, the more you try to think your way toward it, the further it recedes. Cosmic memory does not return as information. It returns as recognition. This recognition bypasses logic because it belongs to a different layer of intelligence. It moves through the body, the emotional field, and the subtle senses long before it forms a coherent thought. That is why people often feel it before they can explain it. A sudden sense of familiarity that has no story attached to it. A quiet inner pause, as if something ancient has just brushed against awareness. A moment where the heart responds before the mind can catch up. This is not imagination. It is resonance. Resonance does not argue or persuade. It simply vibrates. And when two frequencies meet that belong together, Recognition happens instantly. You do not analyze why a piece of music moves you. You feel it. In the same way, remembrance does not require proof. It requires availability. This is why cosmic memory often arrives through patterns rather than explanations. Symbols begin to repeat in your life, not as puzzles to solve, but as echoes. Certain images appear again and again, across different contexts, carrying a familiar weight. You notice specific number sequences appearing with uncanny regularity, not demanding interpretation, but inviting presence. You experience moments of deep déjà vu, not the fleeting kind that passes quickly, but the kind that lingers, leaving you with the sense that you have touched something beyond time. These experiences are not meant to be decoded like messages. They are meant to be felt like reminders. The mind wants to label them, to categorize them, to decide what they mean. But meaning, in this context, is not conceptual. It is experiential. Trying to reduce these moments to explanations often flattens them, stripping them of the very quality that makes them transformative. What matters is not what they mean, but how they move you. The feeling of unexplained familiarity is one of the most common doorways into this remembering. You may encounter a place, a story, or a piece of knowledge that feels strangely like home. Even though you have no personal history with it, there is no emotional drama attached to this feeling. It is quiet, steady, and undeniable, like recognizing your own reflection without needing to be told it is you. This recognition does not elevate you. It grounds you. It reminds you that your sense of being is older than this lifetime, broader than this identity, and more resilient than you were taught to believe. But it does not ask you to leave this world behind. It asks you to inhabit it more fully, with less fear and less contraction. Because this remembering does not operate through the mind. The guidance it requires is remarkably simple. When one of these moments arises, you do not chase it. You do not analyze it. You pause. You breathe. You allow it to pass through you without interference. Like letting a wave move through the body without trying to hold it or push it away. You trust the intelligence of the experience to do what it needs to do. Stopping does not mean disengaging from life. It means suspending the reflex to control. Breathing does not mean changing anything. It means making space. Allowing does not mean believing or committing to an idea. It means not resisting what is already happening. This simplicity can feel almost disappointing to a mind trained to equate depth with complexity. But truth, when it arrives at the right level, is often disarmingly simple. The complexity was part of the forgetting. The simplicity belongs to the remembering. There is a reason this remembrance unfolds gradually. Sudden full recall would overwhelm the system. The human nervous system requires pacing. It integrates in layers, not leaps. Each moment of recognition is calibrated to what you can hold without losing grounding. This is why forcing remembrance through practices, substances, or obsession often leads to distortion. It bypasses the body's wisdom. What unfolds naturally, unfolds sustainably. As you become more familiar with this mode of knowing, you may notice a shift in how you relate to uncertainty. You become less urgent about answers. You do not need to pin experiences down. You are comfortable letting them remain open, trusting that what needs to clarify will do so in its own time. This comfort is not indifference. It is confidence in a deeper process. You also begin to notice that remembrance is not separate from ordinary life. It does not arrive only in meditation or solitude. It appears in everyday moments, while walking, listening, resting, or even doing something mundane. This is intentional. Cosmic memory is not meant to pull you away from your human life. It is meant to weave itself into it. This weaving happens subtly. Your values shift. Your sense of urgency softens. Your reactions slow. You respond more than you react. You feel less need to define yourself through roles, achievements, or explanations. Identity becomes more fluid, less defended. You are no longer trying to prove who you are. You are inhabiting it. There is also humility in this process that often goes unspoken. Remembering your broader origin does not make you superior. It makes you more responsible. You become more aware of how your inner state influences your environment. You feel the impact of your presence more clearly. This awareness invites care, not pride. The mind may still try to intervene, especially during moments of doubt. It may ask whether these experiences are real, whether they matter, whether you are imagining them. You do not need to fight these questions. They belong to a part of you that learned to survive by questioning everything unfamiliar. You can thank that part and gently return to experience. Over time, patterns become clearer. You begin to see that moments of resonance often coincide with periods of alignment. When you are honest with yourself, when you slow down, when you stop performing and start inhabiting, this is not coincidence. Resonance requires coherence. The more coherent your inner state becomes, the more easily memory finds you. This remembering does not ask you to abandon reason. It asks you to place reason in its proper role. The mind becomes a translator rather than a gatekeeper. It helps you articulate what you feel, not decide whether you are allowed to feel it. This shift changes everything. You begin to trust your inner signals without needing to dramatize them. You recognize that not every experience needs to be shared or validated. Some things are meant to be lived quietly, allowed to settle before they take shape in words. This restraint is not secrecy. It is respect for the process. As this respect deepens, remembrance stabilizes. It stops coming in flashes and starts becoming a background orientation. You carry a subtle sense of belonging that does not depend on circumstances. You feel less lost. Even when life is uncertain, you understand that uncertainty does not mean disconnection. It means openness. The instruction remains the same, no matter how complex the experiences appear. Stop when something resonates. Breathe when something stirs. Allow when something opens. This is not passivity. It is participation at the correct level. Remembering your star origin is not about accumulating cosmic facts or adopting a new identity. It is about restoring trust in a layer of knowing that was always present, waiting patiently for you to stop trying so hard to understand and start being willing to feel. When you let remembrance unfold this way, it does not overwhelm you. It grounds you. It does not pull you away from life. It brings you into deeper contact with it. And slowly, without effort, you realize that what you were searching for was never distant. It was waiting in the space you finally allowed yourself to inhabit. 9. Grounding is not the opposite of expansion. There is a misunderstanding that quietly takes root for many people as their awareness begins to widen. A belief that to expand spiritually means to leave the physical world behind, to rise above the body, to transcend the weight and messiness of human life. This belief is understandable, especially if life has been painful or overwhelming. But it is not the truth you are moving toward now. You did not come here to escape the earth. You came here to inhabit it more fully than most dare to. True expansion does not pull you away from the body. It settles you into it. The body you carry is not an obstacle on the spiritual path. It is the most refined instrument available to you on this planet. A living receiver and transmitter designed to translate subtle intelligence into form. Long before you learned to think conceptually about consciousness, your body was already participating in it. It has always known how to sense, how to regulate, how to respond to the field around you. When treated as an enemy or ignored, it contracts. When respected and inhabited, it becomes a bridge. Many people try to access higher states by leaving their bodies mentally, floating above sensation, bypassing the physical experience altogether. This can create moments of dissociation that feel like freedom at first, but over time, it fragments the system. Expansion without grounding does not create wisdom. It creates instability. The intelligence you are reconnecting with now is not asking you to disappear upward. It is asking you to arrive downward. Arrival is a radical act in a culture that glorifies transcendence over presence. When you ground consciously, you are not limiting your awareness. You are giving it somewhere to land. Awareness that has no anchor becomes scattered. Awareness that is embodied becomes transformative. This is why the simplest acts take on new meaning when you are truly present within them. Walking becomes a conversation between your body and the earth beneath you. Eating becomes an exchange of energy rather than a mechanical task. Breathing becomes a rhythm that reconnects you to life rather than something you do unconsciously. These acts are not mundane when they are inhabited. They are initiations. Grounding does not require ritual or performance. It requires honesty. It asks you to feel your weight in your feet, to notice the temperature of the air on your skin, to sense the internal landscape of your body without trying to change it. This noticing is not passive. It is deeply active. It tells the nervous system that it is safe to be here now, and safety is the condition that allows expansion to stabilize. For many people, the impulse to leave the body developed as a coping strategy. When experience felt too intense, too confusing, or too painful, attention learned to retreat upward. This retreat was not a failure. It was intelligence protecting itself. But what once protected you can eventually prevent you from fully living. Grounding invites you to come back gently, at your own pace. Without forcing yourself into sensation you are not ready to hold. This is why presence must be paired with kindness. When you inhabit your body with patience, something remarkable happens. The body begins to trust you. Tension releases not because you commanded it to, but because it no longer feels the need to guard against you. Sensation becomes information rather than threat. You learn the difference between discomfort that signals growth and discomfort that signals harm. This discernment cannot be taught intellectually. It develops through relationship. The more embodied you become, the clearer your perception grows. You notice subtle cues in yourself and others. You sense when something is aligned before you can articulate why. Decisions become simpler, not because life is easier, but because your system is no longer divided. Thought, feeling, and action begin to move in the same direction. This alignment is what allows higher intelligence to express itself through ordinary life. The wisdom you are reconnecting with is not meant to remain abstract. It wants to shape how you live, how you speak, how you relate. It wants to move through your hands, your voice, your choices. And it can only do that when you are present enough to notice what is actually happening. You cannot embody truth while hovering above your own experience. Grounding teaches you that the sacred is not separate from the practical. Washing your hands with awareness carries the same depth as meditation. Preparing a meal with presence can be as transformative as any formal practice. These acts matter because they bring consciousness into the places it once avoided. You may notice that as you ground more deeply, your desire for extreme experiences softens. You are less interested in peak states and more interested in continuity. Less drawn to moments that lift you out of life and more drawn to states that allow you to stay with it. This is not a loss of intensity. It is a refinement of it. Intensity becomes depth. Depth allows you to remain present with complexity without collapsing or escaping. It allows you to hold joy and sorrow in the same breath. It allows you to witness suffering without being consumed by it. This capacity is not developed by leaving the body. It is developed by inhabiting it fully. There is also humility and grounding that can feel unfamiliar at first. You realize that awakening is not about becoming extraordinary in the eyes of the world. It is about becoming available to life as it is. This availability changes how you move through time. You are less rushed, less driven by comparison, more responsive to what is actually being asked of you in each moment. When you walk with awareness, you feel the support beneath you. When you eat with awareness, you feel nourishment rather than distraction. When you breathe with awareness, you feel connection rather than isolation. These are not small things. They are the foundation upon which sustainable expansion rests. Grounding also brings you into clearer relationship with limits. Limits are not failures. They are guides. The body tells you when to rest, when to move, when to stop. Listening to these signals does not slow your growth. It protects it. Growth that ignores limits eventually collapses. Growth that respects them becomes enduring. You may notice that as you ground, you feel more emotion rather than less. This is natural. Embodiment opens the channels that numbness once closed. Feeling more does not mean being overwhelmed. It means you are present enough to process what arises rather than suppress it. This processing happens in waves. You do not need to rush it. The earth itself plays a role in this integration. Contact with natural environments often brings immediate regulation, not because nature is magical, but because it operates at a rhythm the body recognizes. Slower, cyclical, unforced. Spending time in these environments recalibrates you without effort. It reminds the body that it belongs. Belonging is what many people are truly seeking when they try to escape. Grounding reveals that belonging was never somewhere else. It was here, waiting for you to arrive fully. You did not come to this planet to float above it. You came to walk on it, to feel it under your feet, to let intelligence move through muscle and breath and bone, to become a place where the subtle and the solid meet without conflict. When you allow presence to infuse ordinary life, you realize that expansion was never about leaving anything behind. It was about bringing awareness into places it had not yet touched. And when awareness arrives fully, what once felt heavy begins to feel meaningful. This is not the end of the journey upward. It is the beginning of the journey inward and downward, into the only place where transformation can actually live. Here, in the body. Here, in this moment. 10. Authentic frequency naturally reorganizes relationships. There is a moment in this unfolding where relationships begin to change in ways that feel both gentle and unsettling at the same time. Not because anyone has done something wrong, and not because you have suddenly become distant or uncaring, but because something fundamental inside you has stopped negotiating its truth. When you no longer edit yourself to maintain connection, the field around you begins to respond with quiet precision. For a long time, many of your relationships may have been held together by subtle adjustments you barely noticed you were making. You learned when to soften your opinions, when to hold back your questions, when to shrink your emotional range so others would feel comfortable. None of this made you dishonest in a dramatic way. It made you adaptive. And adaptation, in certain seasons, is necessary. But adaptation is not meant to be permanent. As your inner coherence strengthens, the energy required to keep editing yourself becomes harder to justify. It is not that you suddenly decide to be different. It is that you no longer have the energy to be less. Something inside you settles into its natural tone, like a musical note finally held without strain. And when that happens, the entire relational field begins to recalibrate. This recalibration is not personal. It is vibrational. People who resonate with this clearer frequency often move closer without effort. Conversations deepen without planning. Time together feels nourishing rather than draining. You may notice that with certain people, silence becomes comfortable, honesty becomes natural, and presence replaces performance. These connections feel less like work and more like rest. You do not need to explain yourself constantly. You are met rather than managed. At the same time, some relationships begin to loosen, not through conflict, not through dramatic endings, but through quiet distancing. Messages are exchanged less often. Invitations fade naturally. The emotional charge that once held the connection together dissipates. This can feel confusing at first, especially if you are accustomed to equating closeness with effort. But this soft separation is not rejection. It is alignment doing its work. What is important to understand here is that frequency does not argue. It does not convince. It does not negotiate. It simply expresses itself, and resonance responds accordingly. When two instruments are no longer tuned to the same key, forcing them to play together creates tension. Allowing them to separate restores harmony, even if it takes time for the ears to adjust. This is why the reorganization often happens without blame. There is no villain, no failure, no betrayal. Each person is simply responding to what feels true within them. Some are ready to meet you where you are now. Others are not. Neither position is wrong. They are just different points along a spectrum of readiness. The difficulty arises when the mind interprets this shift as loss. It wants to label the distancing as abandonment or rejection. It wants to cling to familiarity, even when that familiarity is built on contraction. But what is leaving your life now is not connection. It is distortion. The distortion created when you had to be someone else to belong. Authentic frequency does not destroy relationships. It reveals which ones were sustained by authenticity and which ones were sustained by accommodation. This revelation can stir grief. Even peaceful endings carry sadness. You may mourn not only the people who drift away, but also the versions of yourself that existed within those relationships. The one who tried harder, the one who compromised quietly, the one who believed love required self-erasure. Allow this grief. It is not weakness. It is integration. Grief clears space. And in that space, something unexpected often appears. A sense of relief you did not anticipate. A lightness in the body. A decrease in background tension. You realize how much energy was being spent maintaining equilibrium that was never truly stable. When that effort drops, life feels simpler, even if it feels quieter at first. It is also important to recognize that this reorganization does not mean you become isolated or superior. In fact, authentic frequency tends to attract deeper connection, not less. But these connections are fewer, cleaner, and more mutual. They do not require constant explanation. They do not depend on you staying small. They allow you to grow without threatening the bond. These relationships are not based on shared history alone. They are based on shared presence. Presence changes how conflict is experienced as well. When you are no longer defending a false version of yourself, disagreements lose their sharpness. You do not need to win to feel safe. You do not need to be right to remain connected. This does not mean you tolerate misalignment. It means you can name truth without aggression and receive difference without collapse. People who cannot meet you in this space often withdraw not because you push them away, but because the old dynamics no longer function. If a relationship depended on you being agreeable, available, or emotionally muted, your authenticity will feel destabilizing. This does not make you unkind. It makes you clear. Clarity is often mistaken for coldness by those who benefited from your confusion. As your frequency stabilizes, you may also notice a change in how you approach new relationships. You are less eager to impress, less interested in proving compatibility. You listen more. You feel more. You allow connections to unfold rather than forcing them into shape. This patience is not indifference. It is discernment born of experience. You understand now that chemistry alone is not enough. Alignment matters. Values matter. Emotional regulation matters. And most of all, mutual honesty matters. These qualities are not demanded. They are felt. When they are absent, your body knows before your mind does. This embodied knowing becomes your guide. It tells you when to lean in and when to step back, when to invest and when to allow space. Following it does not guarantee comfort, but it does guarantee coherence. And coherence is what allows relationships to be nourishing rather than depleting. It is also worth noting that some relationships may transform rather than end. Roles shift. Expectations loosen. The connection becomes simpler, less intense, but more real. This transformation is often quieter than dramatic endings, but it can be just as meaningful. It allows love to exist without obligation. Love that survives authenticity is resilient. Love that requires self-erasure is fragile. As this process continues, you may find yourself surrounded by fewer people, but feeling less lonely. This paradox confuses the mind, but it makes perfect sense to the body. Loneliness comes not from being alone, but from being unseen. When you stop hiding, you stop feeling unseen, even in solitude. Your authentic frequency also influences how you show up for others. You listen without fixing. You support without rescuing. You care without overextending. This balanced presence allows others to take responsibility for their own growth, rather than leaning on you to stabilize their world. This is not withdrawal. It is respect. The harmonious refinement of your relational field is not something you orchestrate. It is something you allow. Each time you choose honesty over accommodation, the field adjusts. Each time you honor your own boundaries, coherence strengthens. Each time you release the need to be understood by everyone, Alignment deepens. Over time, you stop asking why certain people left and start noticing who stayed without effort. You recognize the difference between connection that drains and connection that restores. You trust that what remains is not random. It is resonance made visible. This is not loss. It is clarification. The relationships that align with your authentic frequency do not need constant maintenance. They breathe. They adapt. They allow space. They support growth without demanding sameness. These relationships become places where truth can rest, not perform. And perhaps the most profound shift of all is this. You stop measuring connection by duration or intensity and start measuring it by integrity. By how much of yourself you are able to bring into the space without fear. When you live this way, relationships no longer define your worth. They reflect your alignment. And reflection, when it is honest, is a gift. What is falling away now is not love. It is distortion. What remains is quieter, stronger, and far more real. 11. Trust replaces control in the new timeline. There is a quiet but profound shift that begins to take place when you move fully into this new way of living. A shift that does not announce itself loudly, yet changes everything beneath the surface. The old system you were taught to rely on was built around certainty. It trained you to believe that action should only follow once you had enough information, enough reassurance, enough guarantees that things would work out. You learned to wait until the path was clearly mapped, until the risks were minimized, until you could predict the outcome with reasonable accuracy. This approach made sense in a world shaped by fear of loss and a deep mistrust of the unknown. But the timeline you are now stepping into no longer operates this way. In this new field, clarity does not come before movement. It comes because of movement. The certainty you were taught to seek is no longer the prerequisite for action. It is the byproduct of alignment. This can feel unsettling at first, especially if you spent much of your life believing that control was the same thing as safety. Letting go of control can feel like stepping into emptiness, like releasing your grip without knowing what will catch you. And yet, what you begin to discover is that control was never truly keeping you safe. It was keeping you constrained. Control was a strategy developed in response to unpredictability, a way to reduce anxiety by narrowing the range of possibilities. But in doing so, it also narrowed your experience of life. It limited what could reach you, not because life was withholding, but because control filters out anything that cannot be anticipated. The new timeline does not move through filters. It moves through responsiveness. This is why it reveals itself step by step, like a bridge that only appears when you are willing to place your foot forward. The path ahead does not become visible all at once. It unfolds in response to your willingness to participate without guarantees. This does not mean acting recklessly or ignoring discernment. It means listening for the next honest step rather than demanding the entire map. Trust, in this context, is not blind faith. It is a lived understanding developed through experience. Each time you move from clarity rather than fear, something responds. Each time you act from alignment rather than pressure, the field rearranges itself in subtle but undeniable ways. Over time, a pattern emerges. You begin to recognize that life meets you when you meet yourself. The old system asked you to prove readiness before allowing movement. The new system invites movement as the proof of readiness. This inversion can feel destabilizing because it removes the illusion of total control. You no longer get to wait until everything makes sense. You are asked to sense instead of calculate, to feel instead of predict. This does not diminish intelligence. It expands it. Intelligence becomes embodied rather than abstract. You may notice that when you try to force outcomes now, resistance increases. Doors remain closed. Energy drains quickly. But when you move gently, following what feels quietly right, rather than what seems strategically advantageous, things align with less effort. This alignment does not always bring comfort, but it brings coherence. And coherence is far more sustainable than control. The mind often struggles during this transition. It has been trained to associate uncertainty with danger. When certainty disappears, it sounds alarms. It urges you to hesitate, to overthink, to retreat into familiar patterns. These impulses are not enemies. They are remnants of an old operating system doing what it was designed to do. You do not need to fight them. You simply do not need to let them drive. As trust replaces control, patience begins to feel different. It is no longer passive waiting. It becomes active listening. You pay attention to timing. You notice when something feels forced and when it feels supported. You become attuned to subtle signals that were previously drowned out by urgency. This attunement allows you to move with life rather than against it. One of the most challenging aspects of this shift is releasing the need to know how things will turn out. The desire for outcomes is deeply ingrained, especially in a culture that equates success with predictability. But the new timeline does not reward outcome fixation. It responds to presence. When you are present, you can respond appropriately to what arises. When you are fixated on outcomes, you often miss what is actually happening. This does not mean you abandon intention. It means intention becomes directional rather than prescriptive. You hold a sense of what matters to you, but you release rigid expectations about how it must arrive. This flexibility allows life to surprise you in ways control never could. There is often grief woven into this transition as well. Grief for the years spent trying to manage everything, believing that if you could just plan better or work harder, you would finally feel secure. Letting go of that effort can feel like admitting you were wrong, but it is not an admission of failure. It is an acknowledgement of growth. You are no longer operating from the same level of fear. Trust develops gradually. It does not arrive as a sudden leap of faith. It accumulates through small confirmations. You take a step without certainty, and something supports you. You pause when something feels off, and later realize that pause protected you. These experiences build a quiet confidence that does not need to be announced. You begin to trust not because you are promised safety, but because you recognize responsiveness. Responsiveness is the hallmark of the new timeline. Life becomes a dialogue rather than a demand. You listen, you respond, you adjust. This dynamic movement replaces rigid planning. It requires humility, because you must admit you do not know everything. It also requires courage, because you must move without guarantees. But what it gives in return is aliveness. You may notice that when you surrender control, your energy increases, effort decreases, decision-making becomes clearer. You are no longer constantly bracing for what might go wrong. You are available for what is actually happening. This availability allows creativity to emerge. Solutions arise that planning could never have produced. The bridge appears because you step, not because you wait. Waiting for certainty often becomes a subtle form of avoidance. It feels responsible, but it keeps you stuck. Trust, when it is grounded, moves you forward even when the way is not fully lit. You discover that light does not precede movement, it follows it. This does not mean every step will be easy. Some will lead you into discomfort. Some will ask you to let go of familiar identities or patterns. But even these steps carry a different quality. They feel meaningful rather than chaotic. You sense that you are being shaped rather than punished. As trust becomes your default orientation, control loses its grip. You no longer need to manage life to feel safe. Safety comes from knowing you can meet whatever arises with presence. This is a deeper kind of security, one that does not depend on circumstances remaining stable. The new timeline is not asking you to surrender intelligence. It is asking you to surrender rigidity. It is inviting you into a partnership where life responds to honesty, movement, and openness rather than fear-driven control. You are not being asked to leap blindly. You are being asked to step honestly, and with each honest step, the ground meets you, quietly and reliably, reminding you that trust was never about believing everything would be easy, but about knowing you would not be alone in the unfolding. 12. Purpose is not a role, but a state of being. For a long time, many people were taught to think of purpose as something external and fixed, a role to discover, a title to inhabit, or a function to perform in order to justify their existence. Purpose was framed as a destination you were supposed to arrive at, preferably early and with clarity, so that life could finally make sense. This belief created enormous pressure, not because purpose is heavy by nature, but because it was misunderstood. Purpose is not something you do. It is something you allow yourself to be. When purpose is treated as a role, it becomes rigid. You start measuring yourself against imagined expectations. You wonder whether you are doing enough, whether you are on the right path, whether you are falling behind. Purpose becomes another task to manage, another identity to protect, another source of quiet anxiety. And yet, the deeper truth is far simpler and far kinder. Purpose reveals itself through presence. It emerges naturally when you are aligned with yourself. It shows up not as a grand announcement, but as a subtle pull toward what feels alive, meaningful, and honest. It does not shout instructions. It whispers invitations, and those invitations are felt more than they are understood. Intuition becomes one of the clearest signals here. Not intuition as a dramatic voice or mystical vision, but intuition as a steady inner sense of direction, a knowing that arises without explanation, a sense of yes or no that does not argue with itself. This intuition grows stronger as you stop outsourcing your authority to external opinions and start listening inwardly, with respect. Joy is another signal, often misunderstood because it has been trivialized. Joy is not constant happiness or excitement. It is a quiet aliveness that arises when you are engaged in something that resonates with your nature. You may feel it while creating, while listening deeply, while helping someone without expectation, or while being alone and fully yourself. Joy does not demand justification. It simply appears when alignment is present. Creativity flows from the same place. Creativity is not limited to art or expression in obvious forms. It includes problem-solving, caregiving, building, teaching, and any act that brings something new into form. When creativity is aligned with purpose, it feels nourishing rather than draining. You lose track of time not because you are escaping life, but because you are participating in it fully. Service also emerges naturally, not as obligation, but as overflow. When you are aligned, you want to contribute, not to prove your worth, but because giving feels like a natural extension of being alive. This kind of service does not deplete you. It energizes you. It respects your limits. It does not require self-sacrifice to be meaningful. These signals do not need to be organized into a single job description or life plan. In fact, trying to confine them often suffocates them. Purpose is dynamic. It evolves as you evolve. What expresses your purpose in one season may look very different in another. This does not mean you were wrong before. It means you are alive now. Following what makes you feel most alive is not selfish. It is responsible. When you are alive inside yourself, your presence becomes a gift to others without effort. You listen more deeply. You respond more honestly. You bring clarity rather than confusion into the spaces you inhabit. This impact does not depend on scale. It depends on sincerity. A small act done from alignment carries more weight than a large act done from obligation. One of the most difficult shifts here is letting go of the need to explain your purpose to others. When purpose is treated as a role, it demands validation. When it is lived as a state of being, explanation becomes unnecessary. You may find that some people do not understand your choices. This is not a sign that you are lost. It is a sign that you are no longer organizing your life around external approval. Purpose lived as presence feels grounded rather than dramatic. It does not need urgency to sustain it. It allows rest. It allows uncertainty. It allows change. You are no longer chasing meaning. You are inhabiting it. This does not mean life becomes easy. Challenges still arise. Effort is still required. But the effort feels different. It feels aligned. You are no longer pushing yourself towards something you believe you should want. You are responding to what is actually calling you now. There is humility in this approach that often goes unnoticed. You stop trying to be important and start trying to be real. You stop measuring success by recognition and start measuring it by integrity. You notice whether your actions feel clean inside, whether your words match your values, whether your choices allow you to sleep peacefully at night. Purpose as a state of being also changes how you relate to time. You no longer feel pressured to arrive somewhere by a certain age or stage. You trust that what needs to express itself will do so when the conditions are right. This trust does not make you passive. It makes you responsive. You act when something feels aligned. You pause when it does not. Over time, this responsiveness creates a life that feels coherent rather than chaotic. You may also notice that purpose stops being singular. It becomes layered. You can express it in multiple ways simultaneously. Through your work, through your relationships, through how you care for your body and environment, through how you show up in ordinary moments. There is no hierarchy here. No activity is more spiritual than another when it is lived with presence. Walking can be purposeful. Listening can be purposeful. Resting can be purposeful. Purpose is not always productive in the traditional sense. Sometimes its expression is simply being fully present in a moment that requires your attention. Sometimes it is choosing honesty over convenience. Sometimes it is choosing rest over performance. These choices shape your life far more deeply than any title ever could. There may be moments when you feel uncertain again, when the signals feel quiet or confusing. This does not mean you have lost your purpose. It means you are being asked to return to presence rather than projection. Purpose does not disappear when it is not loud. It rests, waiting for your willingness to listen again. The more you trust this process, the less you need to search. You recognize that purpose has been moving through you all along, expressing itself in ways that made sense for who you were at the time. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was off track. Each expression prepared the ground for the next. Following what makes you feel alive does not guarantee approval, comfort, or certainty, but it does guarantee honesty. And honesty is the foundation of any life that feels whole. You are not here to perform a purpose. You are here to embody one. And embodiment happens not through striving, but through allowing yourself to be where you are, as you are, with curiosity, courage, and care. When you live this way, purpose stops being a question you need to answer and becomes a quality that quietly infuses everything you do. That quiet infusion is the signal. Returning, not searching. If there is one truth worth resting into now, it is this. You are not late. Not even a little. There is no hidden schedule you failed to meet. No cosmic clock quietly judging your pace. No version of life you were supposed to arrive at sooner but somehow missed. Nothing essential has been lost. Nothing meaningful slipped past you while you were trying to survive, heal, or simply make it through the day. Every moment you once labeled as being lost, every stretch of time that felt unproductive or stagnant, every pause that seemed like life had stalled, was never an error. Those moments were recalibrations. They were necessary adjustments happening beneath the surface. Unseen but precise. Like roots growing in darkness before anything can emerge above the soil. What appeared as delay was often preparation. What felt like confusion was often integration. What you are experiencing now is not a departure from your true nature. It is not a spiritual detour or a deviation from who you were meant to be. It is restoration, a gradual, embodied return to something that never truly left you, but had to remain quiet for a time so that you could live fully inside the human experience. This journey has never been about going somewhere else. It has never been about becoming something new. It has always been about coming back. Back to a state of inner coherence. Back to a sense of belonging that does not depend on circumstances. Back to the simple, steady truth of being yourself without armor. A return does not look like fireworks. It does not feel like triumph. Most of the time, it feels like relief. Like exhaling after holding your breath for years without realizing you were doing so. Like setting down a weight you forgot you were carrying. There is a quiet softness to it. A gentleness that does not need to prove anything. You may notice that as you return, life feels less dramatic but more real. Less driven by urgency and more guided by clarity. You stop trying to outrun discomfort and start listening to what it is asking you to release. You stop striving to become whole and realize you never truly left wholeness behind. You were simply focused elsewhere for a while. This return is not to a place. It is to a truth that lives beneath roles, identities, achievements, and failures. A truth that does not change when circumstances do. A truth that remains intact even when you forget it exists. This truth is not complicated. It does not require belief. It requires presence. Tonight, before sleep, when the noise of the day begins to soften and the mind loosens its grip on stories, offer yourself a moment of tenderness, not as a ritual to perform, but as an act of kindness. Speak these words quietly, not to convince yourself of anything, but to remind the body and the deeper layers of awareness of what they already know. I remember my true nature. I align with my cosmic origin. I allow my soul's mission to unfold with clarity and grace. Say them slowly, not as declarations of achievement, but as permissions. Let them settle into you the way warm water settles into tired muscles. There is no need to feel anything special. There is no need for certainty. The listening is enough. You are not merely observing this transformation from the outside. You are not standing on the edge watching something happen elsewhere. This movement is occurring through you, through your choices, through your pauses, through your willingness to feel what you once avoided and release what you once clung to. You are the place where this remembering is taking form. That can feel like a lot to hold, but it is also profoundly simple. You do not need to do more. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to accelerate your growth or compare your process to anyone else's. The work now is quieter. It is about staying with yourself when things feel uncertain, staying present when old habits ask you to escape, staying open when the next step is not yet visible. This staying is not passive. It is courageous. It requires trust, not in outcomes, but in your capacity to meet whatever arises with honesty and care. Trust that you can listen without rushing. Trust that you can move without guarantees. Trust that life responds when you respond to yourself. There will still be days when doubt returns. Days when you wonder if you are imagining this, if you are drifting, if you should be doing more. These moments do not erase your progress. They are part of being human. When they appear, you do not need to fix them. You only need to recognize them as weather, not as truth. Truth does not fluctuate with mood. Truth remains. As you continue, you may find that what once felt like searching loses its grip. You stop looking outward for confirmation. You stop asking whether you are on the right path and start noticing whether you feel aligned in the step you are taking now. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. It brings you back into relationship with the present moment, where life actually unfolds. You may also notice a growing compassion for your past selves, the versions of you who did not know what you know now, the versions who made choices out of fear, confusion, or survival. Instead of judging them, you begin to thank them. They carried you here. They endured what was necessary so that you could arrive with depth rather than innocence. Nothing you lived through was wasted. Nothing you felt was meaningless. This return is not about erasing the past. It is about integrating it, allowing every chapter of your life to take its rightful place in the whole story. A story that is still unfolding, still alive, still responsive to how honestly you meet it. And here is the quiet, powerful truth that often arrives last. You do not need to rush the beginning. Beginnings that last unfold gently. They take root slowly. They grow stronger through consistency rather than intensity. What is opening now does not require force. It requires care. This is only the beginning. Not because something dramatic is about to happen, but because you are now meeting life from a different place. A place of presence rather than pursuit, of alignment rather than effort, of remembering rather than searching. Stay here. Stay with yourself. Let the return continue at its own pace. You are already where you need to be.